clicker will point my way. Just point that side.
We have to test these things before they're working. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone has had a good breakfast. I'm one of those culprits of Jamia Nairobi, so excuse us for a moment. So, is it? This one, huh? Okay, second one. Try not to. Good. Yes, so my name is Bernard. I'm one of the co-founders at Sanifu, and we are the guys who do the boring stuff in automation, and we use AI as an enabler. So Sanifu is an AI data engineer. I believe most of us in the room probably know what an AI data engineer or data engineer is basically. These are guys who deal a lot with data on a daily basis. They're buried in data. They're sieving through files. They're dealing with a lot of Excels. My colleague spoke about people being buried in Excel sheets. For those who are a bit technical, they deal a lot with databases and things like that. So what Sanifu does is we basically enable all team members to be data engineers at their own dictation. So we basically enable these guys to use plain English to turn repetitive flows of messy data into single sources of truth. So as an example, if you are, for example, a financial analyst, on a daily basis, you're dealing with a lot of Excel data, for example. Maybe you need to put a bunch of Excels together for you to do a balance sheet and things like that. So you can imagine the amount of time it takes for you to basically do a balance sheet. And what Sanifu does is it basically makes that very easy for you. So just to show you how the solution looks like before I jump into case studies, we have a very basic interface, just like ChatGPT, because that is what people already used to. It basically asks you to enter your prompt, and we have a bunch of options there that you can choose from. But you can basically enter any type of data you want to automate based on your type of work. So for example, in the first one there you have automation of bank reconciliation with ledgers as an example. So what you have to do basically is just enter whatever prompt you have, or whatever you basically tell an automation engineer into Sanifu, and it will do that for you. For example, if you want to pull, say, eTeams data from eTeams directly into your SAP or into your Oracle or other ERPs, Sanifu is able to do that for you. So this is very easy stuff for Sanifu to handle. You don't need to have any technical knowledge. You don't need to speak to an engineer or anything of that sort. So you just tell what you want Sanifu to do, and it figures basically out everything for you. So an example here we have is, say, you're a manufacturing company or an FMCG company, or you do consumer packaged goods, and you get a lot of, say, orders from the large retailers. It could be neighbors who are sending you orders, or Carrefour who are sending you orders and things like that. So typically, you'll have a lot of clerks. You have to employ a lot of clerks, a lot of data entry people to enter this data for you. And obviously, that takes a lot of time. So if you're, for example, doing, say, bread or chicken, or you're selling any perishable product, any delay basically in between the supply chain is a delay to the end customer. So if you're doing something like, say, fresh chicken, by the time it gets to the customer, probably, if it was frozen, it would have lost a bit of weight. So data entry is where basically all the process begins. So say, for example, you've received an order from a customer, it's come to your email. Typically, you'll have someone reading the email, downloading the PDF, starting to enter that manually. A process which typically takes you around, will take around, say, 10 or 20 minutes to enter just one PO. For Sanifu, it's quite simple. We basically integrate the entire Sanifu stack into your workflow process. So the first step is integration to email. So if you're using, say, Outlook, or you're using Gmail, we're able to integrate there, and whatever document comes into that email, we're able basically to read it. Once it reads the document, it's able to know this is a PO, and it's able basically to enter that directly into the system. So basically what now your data entry clerk do is basically verify. So we basically transform the work of data entry to basically people turning to become quality verification specialists. So we basically remove all the manual work that is involved in that process. So it's quite simple. And obviously, once you are set up, the dashboard is quite basic also, just like any other dashboard. All the workflows built by your staff get shown on the left. So this could be, you have all the departments, they have different needs. So maybe in finance, they want to automate creation of balance sheets. In the sales department, they want to automate, say, supplier entry. In the procurement department, they want to automate the process of reviewing RFQs and things like that. So each of those employee heads or departmental heads can basically create all their workflows within Sanifu using those basic prompts. So I'll give you an example. So one of the customers using Sanifu is Kenchik, the largest producer or processor of chicken in Eastern Central Africa. And they got in touch with us, and the core problem their sales team had was you have a data entry clerk basically reporting to work at, say, 6 a.m. Once they're at the desk, you fire up your machine, and the first thing you do once you're at your machine, obviously, is to check all orders from, say, midnight up to that particular morning. So you have, obviously, all the large supermarkets mostly send their orders during the night, so that for those who are doing perishable things like bread, you get them in your inbox in the morning. So typically, all these clerks will basically spend a lot of time doing that entry. By the time they're done with the overnight orders, the trucks are already delayed. So you can imagine if you're supposed to deliver chicken that is supposed to get to Nakuru by 2 p.m., and that process delays, you basically have the entire supply chain broken. So any lost time at that entry process of data entry basically means that you are having a lot of delays to the other teams. So, so every morning, basically, the rules allow 2 hours of dispatch. And because you had people basically reporting to work in the morning, starting the entire process of doing data entry from scratch. So Sanifu came in, we implemented the entire workflow for the teams, their plants. And right now, what the teams have to do is just report it to their desk. They'll find Sanifu has done all the entries for them. The only thing they just have to do is verify and release to the dispatch team. So there are a couple of things that we did to make that process efficient. You can imagine this is a process that you don't want to introduce new software to the team. The team's already using a lot of ERPs. So you're trying to minimize the amount of tech stack you're introducing to the end user. So a lot of work was spent basically building the infrastructure, obviously. AI was very, very important in terms of ensuring that we are mapping out the data correctly. And you can imagine if the AI does a wrong entry, instead of saying a shipment is supposed to go to Naivas Nakuru and it enters Naivas Naivasha, the truck will go to Naivasha. So any mistake that the AI makes, it has a massive result. So you have to have almost 100% accuracy. These are areas where, when I mentioned we do the boring stuff, these are the areas where people don't get to talk about, where there's a lot of opportunity for startups to automate, but there's a lot of tech stuff that you need to build. And these things, we consider AI as an enabler, not the end solution to give to the customer, because if you ask the user, if you go to Kenchik, for example, and ask the user what Sanifu is, they'll tell you it's just a data entry clerk, right? But 90% of the work basically on the back end is data transformation. You have to ingest the data from where it's coming from, basically a PO. So companies like QuickMart will basically dump all their 100 POs into your email. You have to figure out how to pass that data in a way that it gets into the ERP safely. So there's the whole process of collection of the data. You have to collect the data from the source. You have to clean it. Cleaning means, for example, if you have a PO that is scanned and you have those scanner noises on the paper, you have to remove those lines. That's what you call cleaning. After that, you have to do now what you call enrichment. Enrichment is whereby you're saying, okay, you have this PO coming in, but we don't know who the customer is, because some of the customers don't indicate their name, so you have to figure out who is the customer. So you have to build a lot of data points to be able to identify who is the right customer. And initially, that was taking, these teams a lot of time for them to be able to identify. A clerk will basically spend 1 hour trying to see, okay, which customer is this? If you call them at 6 in the morning, they're not picking, so you have to figure out who that customer is. So enrichment is a very critical part of that process. And then you have, lastly, transformation, where you have to transform that data in a way that the ERP on the other side can consume. And once that is done, you have to integrate that into the system. So there's a lot of work that goes into the entire process to make the end user's experience quite enjoyable. So right now, these teams are spending less than 30 minutes from order entry to verification to dispatch, from basically a 2-hour delay. And that is basically over 80% in cost savings for all these teams. So you can see the AI is not coming to replace the team. It's coming in to basically enable these guys to be more efficient, basically do dispatches faster, and basically save a lot of time that they could otherwise use for other strategic tasks in the team. Second example, which is also in the finance space, is we work with the DPL Festive Bread to enable them reduce the time that the finance team spends, doing a lot of entries or remittance notes. I think all of us have consumed festive bread, so any bread that gets to your table, it passes through our system right now. So it's pretty good to see that happening. So, so what happens in this case is you have a finance. How many of us in the room are finance people? Finance or finance analysts, or you're an accountant, or you spend a lot of time doing balance sheets? How many? Or how many of us have employed finance teams? We only have a few. Or how many of us have employed, say, data clerks, data entry clerks in the room? Or you have a bunch of people who do this work on a daily basis? What type of people do you have in this room? Pretty interesting. So these large companies, what they have is you basically have a lot of payment allocations coming in from the large customers. So you'll have a large customer paying you, say, 30 million. They tell you, okay, this 30 million, you need to allocate it across 50 invoices. So that has to be done by a finance person. They have to sit down, look at the remittance note, and then start manually allocating all those entries into the whatever system they're using. So same process, Sanifu was able to figure out the formats of the incoming remittance note, the incoming data, and transform basically in a way that it's able to know, okay, all this payment needs to be distributed across all these 50 or 100 invoices. So the key thing here is you have to invest a lot of time in training the AI to understand what type of invoices are pending, what type of allocations to make to a certain invoice, and things like that. So here also it's one of the areas where if the AI makes a mistake, you're basically losing money, right? So we had to build a stack that ensures that we have, again, almost 100% accuracy. So right now, basically the team has reduced a 5 days worth of work to just a day. So once they go to their desks, obviously, if you're a finance person, you'll find everything has been done for you by Sanifu, and the only thing you have to do is basically to verify. So for operational teams, if you're in operation right now, and either you're in sales operations or you're in finance operations and things like that, obviously for you, what you care about is not the AI stuff, or you're not caring about what the AI did. You are still checking files to ensure that they are reconciled, or you are still matching payments, or you are still unsure if it's complete. That is the end result for the user. So the AI in between has to figure out how do you ensure that you are basically removing all that operational work from the user. So when we are designing these systems, we always put the user first and work backwards. So in fact, oftentimes what we prefer is not even telling the user that this is AI, or pitching to the customer that we are using AI to do ABCD. We're always pitching the end result. Your team will save 20% of the data entry time. Your team will basically save 80% of the dispatch time, and things like that. So those are the key things that drive Sanifu and the team we have across Africa and other parts of the world as well. So, so what is common across all these use cases? So number one, we put business rules first. So when you're building these systems, there is always what we call ensuring that you are making the SOP into the automation process. That means, for example, if finance has a specific way of doing things, you have to bake that into the Sanifu workflow. If the sales team has a specific way of doing things, you have to bake that into the system and things like that. So there's a logic layer. So this logic layer, in human terms, you'll translate it into what we call tribal knowledge. If you go to a specific company, there's a clerk who knows what type of client always orders a specific thing, right? If you fire that clerk, for example, you'll have to figure out how to train the other person to do that job. So you can imagine how do you replicate now that process across, say, 20 different teams, where each team basically has tribal knowledge. If you go to finance team, they know, okay, when this customer pays 100 million, it's distributed across this set of customers. So that tribal knowledge can be translated into a set of business rules that has to be, or departmental rules that has to be translated into the system, essentially. So we also prioritize humans for exceptions. So these are areas where the AI might get something wrong, and you have to escalate to, say, a human. For example, it might struggle to identify this payment, where did it come from? It doesn't have a customer name. It's basically a picture sent on WhatsApp and things like that. So how do you ensure that it's picking the correct entry for that particular entry? So for those cases, obviously, we put humans first, where we escalate those cases to the teams. And Sanifu AI learns with context, based on the transactions that the customer does, or based on the history of the customer. Sanifu is basically able to learn with time and figure out how to do the other, or how to scale up the process to the other teams. And we're always doing continuous development. A very interesting example also is a company called Osho Chemicals. If you've bought Motin Doom, these are the makers of Motin Doom and such products. You had a bunch of people basically leaving work late because they couldn't figure out how to automate part of the work that they are doing. So what Sanifu did in this case is show the clicker, sorry. I think it's having an issue. But for these guys, basically, they deal a lot with distributors, and they get a lot of handwritten notes. Just like doctors, if you're dealing with agrovets, you have to get a lot of these orders in handwritten notes. What Sanifu was able to do is do the similar data ingestion engine, and it enhanced accuracy by almost 90%. And that team right now leaves work a bit early. So there's this rat race for ops teams where you have to manually read data, you have to manually verify, you have to manually post entries, and you have to repeat that cycle every single day. You can imagine if you have a whole team of people or 100 people, you're spending basically a lot of money trying to get these things work. So what Sanifu does in that case, we take over and transform that rat race for ops teams into basically a workflow they can work with. So the first step here is we collect the data, we clean it, we transform it in a way that you can use it, we enrich it, and we integrate that into your system. So what is your single source of truth in this case? You can possibly, it could be a single, clean file of Excel, it could be business intel, it could be documents, it could be system data and things like that. And what Sanifu does is being able to help you get that single source of truth quickly without spending a lot of human data. So, I mean, there are a couple of challenges. I think we have other AI enthusiasts in the room. A couple of challenges we initially faced. Obviously, building the logic layer was quite tough, where you have to translate tribal knowledge into automated systems. The ETL layer is also quite challenging. And also, basically, translating the prompts into a way that the AI can understand. My colleague from Quantos spoke about when you are talking to Siri, it has to transform into a prompt. Similar thing here. So you have to figure out how does that translate into a prompt on the back end. So those are some of the couple of issues that were initially faced when building this. So we are actually one of the leading AI companies across Africa right now. For Kenya, we have a couple of brands using Sanifu already. So we have the like of Kenchik, Pwani, Gapwell Industries, Chandera Industries, and a couple of other guys. So we are releasing the second version of Sanifu, and we are giving away 10 slots to attendees in the room. So we'll be happy to speak to anyone who will be interested, just to work with you and figure out how can we get you to the AI-fast economy. So appreciate it. Thank you.